Hey, this is Nathalie Kalbach, and I'm super excited to be here with two special guests today, and that will be Birgit from the Netherlands and my friend Julie Fei-Fan Balzer from the Boston area in the USA. And they both are very special friends to me, super duper artists, mixed media artists, makers, whatever you want to call them or whatever they want to be called. And they are with Creative Jumpstart, which is now in its 10th anniversary, for 10 years. This is the 10th time they're participating. They have been supporting me in all those 10 years, and I can't thank those guys enough for their support and their love and being part of this crazy idea that I had 10 years ago. We would talk a little bit about it. But I want to give those two a chance to introduce themselves if you don't know them yet. So, Birgit, since I butchered your name all the time, I let you go first.
Okay, well, thank you, Nathalie. Let me then pronounce my name right for everybody to hear. So my name is Birgit Koopsen. And I'm from the Netherlands, and I've known Nathalie for, we recently discovered, I think we said 16 years, when she was still living in Europe, and we were practically neighbors. And so she lives in Germany, I live in the Netherlands. I live in a tiny little village called Winsum, which is actually has been chosen to be the most beautiful village of the country. So I live in the most beautiful village of the country for the next 4 years. And then be another village, the most beautiful, I guess. And I'm married for, that's a good question, 26 years. That's not true. Sorry, can you cut this out?
No, don't cut this out. This is an important part of this interview.
I can't even remember. Oh my gosh. I can't even remember when I was married. I can remember, but I can't do the calculation in my head. Doesn't matter. I'm married, and I'm a mom of three.
I'm sorry, honey. You're married.
Go to Cyclover. So I'm married with my husband Eric, and we've been together since I was 18. So like forever. And we have 3 kids, and I have a beautiful daughter-in-law. And I'm a mixed media artist. And what else would you like to know?
I will ask you a couple more questions. You make wonderful artwork. You're really good in printmaking, painting, and you're a great teacher. I love your classes, and people come from all over to take classes with you, and you go usually all over the world to teach. So, fantastic teacher and a wonderful friend. So now off to Julie. Hey, Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Fei-Fan Balzer. I also have a name that people don't like to pronounce correctly, but that's just the way that it is. So I live outside of Boston, and Nathalie and I also can't do the math, so I have no idea how long Nathalie and I have been friends, but I do know that we met online many years ago when we both were reunited in a love of scrapbooking, but with like paint and all sorts of media instead of just cutting paper. And then we actually met in person in France, and I would say it was love at first sight. So we had quite an adventure. In a very interesting art retreat. We shared a very small room with some very weird accommodations. But, I would say if we can survive that, we can survive so many things. So I have been delighted to be a part of Creative Jumpstart. I think Nathalie is, just as she said about Birgit, a wonderful teacher. I've been happy to co-teach things with her. She's also a wonderful person, and she's also very funny. And a fun fact that I want to share with you about Nathalie that I think is an important personal characteristic, which also a characteristic she shares with my baby. So now there are two people in my life who both share this important characteristic, is that they never finish a drink to the very bottom. There's only one sip left at the bottom. So, and as soon as the baby started doing it, I was like, oh my God, Nathalie has had an influence on my baby from way far away, ruining him for finishing his drink. It's a very sad thing, Nathalie. I'm disappointed.
Wait till he tells you why he's doing that. He will be saying, it tastes dead.
I'm very excited for him to actually say anything at all. So if it's about why he doesn't drink that last sip, that will be thrilling.
Yeah, and Julie's also an amazing artist. She teaches a lot. She is the host of the show Make It Artsy. She has been teaching all over, online workshops, in-person workshops. She's doing a ton of online workshops right now as well. And both of you guys have always been a big highlight of Creative Jumpstart. And if I can say so, a student's favorite too all the years. So, I mean, just saying. So 10 years ago, when I was thinking about, I woke up and I was thinking about Creative Jumpstart, had this crazy idea because I was always very drawn after the holiday season. And then January, and that's maybe another secret, is one of my least favorite months. It's just is what it is. I think there is something about it that all the hype of the holiday season and wonderful things is kind of like over. And then you have all these like weird resolutions and ideas and goals for the next year. But it's cold and I don't like winter and everything, the days are short, it's dark and everything is just like dragging on. And I thought it would be...
I see you nodding, Birgit, but my birthday's in January. So let's just say that January's not the worst month, okay?
That's the highlight of the month, as we know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was thinking, there needs to be something that that maybe other people feel the same way, and how can we change that? And that's how I came up with Creative Jumpstart. And I remember actually that when I had this idea, I went and texted Julie right away or emailed you. I think we might have texted. And I tried to convey what I was thinking, and you were like, I don't know. I don't understand this idea. It sounds weird. But you know what? I'm in. I'm going to help where I can. And I think finally, now she knows. But you have been true to your word. You supported me ever since. And then I also contacted Birgit and I asked, hey, do you want a part of this? And Birgit was like, sure, why not? So... I'm glad that I did it because I always, I'm always excited. I love the community. I love connecting with the teachers, getting to know other teachers as well. Sometimes it's the only time a year that I talk with you guys. If I don't, well, not with you guys, but with some teachers, right, that I don't see. And I love the community of students and how this developed, that people are really looking forward to the new event and they can't wait and see what the theme is. How do you feel about Creative Jumpstart?
No, I really like Creative Jumpstart. I like the whole concept and I like the short videos. I like that because you're doing it for so many years already, that so many people are actually looking forward to it and like signing up every year again because they know what they can expect. They know that it will be good. They know that it will gets better every year. Basically, I really feel like it's getting better over the years, and yeah, I mean we have a wonderful host. You are a wonderful host, and you have everything so well organized. You are. You are so organized. Everything is so organized, and yeah, I just love it. I love being part of it. It's a no-brainer. If I get your email with the invitation, I don't read the email. I just say yes. I'm there. Easy as that. Yeah.
I would say for me, I think, Creative Jumpstart, there are a couple things that I really like about it. A, as a teacher, and B, as a student. Like, one thing I think is that the short videos are really important. I've been a part of some big group classes where there's a requirement that you make your video like at least half an hour and that it can be up to 2 hours long. And I'm sorry, like, kill me now. For my personal style of learning, I could never sit through that. And I have found myself in those situations almost having to basically like not fast forward through stuff that I would normally fast forward through, not like, cut to the chase, talk for no reason at all, just to sort of fluff it out. I think that there are few things in life that need 2 hours of explaining, unless you're talking about a more complex class, which honestly should be broken down into smaller pieces. So I think, for me, Creative Jumpstart has always been a taster class. I get to get a quick technique and a taste of what a teacher's teaching style is like. So that's really nice because, you know what I mean, in like 5 to 7 minutes, you can actually get an amazing amount of information. I mean, if you think about, like, Birgit, you post great tutorials all the time on Instagram, and those are under 1 minute. If you think about, if you can communicate that in under a minute, what can you do with 7 minutes? That's actually an enormous amount of time. So I like that. And then I also do like, sometimes I run into teachers who I'm like, oh, wow, I'm willing to pony up the money to take their bigger classes because I really like what I see, and sometimes you're like, that wasn't what I expected. I'll just keep my mouth shut and move on to the next video. But I think like that's the thing, which is it's never that anything's not the good quality or not anything like that, but it's like that may not be my taste. That may not be my way of thinking. I think a huge part of learning is finding a teacher who teaches the way that you think. It's not that they have to create the same work that you want to create, but it's that their process of getting there, right, makes sense to you naturally. You don't have to sort of hurt yourself to do all sorts of weird gymnastics in order to get there. And I think that you can tell pretty quickly whether someone's teaching style is like, I get that, or whether someone's teaching style is like, what? And that's, again, not a good or a bad, but it is a stylistic issue. So for me, it's a smorgasbord buffet of, delicious, arting samples to taste with no calories.
And what I really like about it is that because everybody's working with the same theme, that you can pick little bits from every teacher and combine them to your own taste and your own style. So you get all these, maybe everybody's using the same product, but everybody's using it in a different way, and you can pick the things that you like because you get so many short videos where you can just pick your, like you say, a smorgasbord. You can bring them all together, and you do not have like only a couple of teachers with a whole big class with all the little parts. That's what I really like. I mean, I also love to eat tapas.
Right.
That's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of different things that you can pick from.
I think the thing that's why I love it too, is because when I think up a theme, and I usually, when I send it out to you guys, I don't explain too much of what I had. Like, of course I have a bigger thought process in mind, how that relates to me or why I picked it. But when I send it out to you, I send it out with a couple of sentences. And then I let you do whatever you want to do, right? So there's no, which sometimes people find a little bit like hard. They're like, you don't want to give us more guidelines? And I'm like, no, like what does that jumpstart in you when I give you the theme, right? And what I love is then when I get the videos, it's so exciting to just see how differently all of you have, interpreted the theme, or how you approach it, or what it makes you think of. And for me this year, storytelling, for 2021, we chose Storyteller because I feel like for me it's an important thing, especially in our world right now where we are so divided in so many levels. And I've been thinking a lot about the connective tissue that we have as human beings. And for me, I think it's storytelling. It's stories. The stories connect us with each other. When you hear stories or you read about stories or you watch a movie or whatever, you either relate to parts of the story or not, but there's something going on, and I think that makes it easier to understand people, to feel empathy. You're like, oh, I like this person. Why do you like this person? Is there part of the story or the way how they convey their story that connects with you, right? So I thought it would be fun. I know that what connects us all, of course, is art. And I would argue, and we shall see what you think, I would argue that we are all telling a story through our art, whether we do it on purpose or not. What you think?
I would say I kind of disagree, but agree. And here's why. I'll explain that. So on the one hand, I think that to me, art should tell a story, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to communicate some version of how you view the world, whether it's a realistic portrait of a field of poppies, or a completely abstract construction. Something in what you're creating is your brain, out of your head now on canvas or paper or whatever it is you're doing. Do you know what I mean? And that's your story. On the other hand, I do think that one of the things that makes, to me at least, the difference between like art and art with a capital A, if we can go that way, is purpose and is consciousness, and is the ability to say that what I'm doing is putting my perspective out, and what I'm doing is coming from my point of view. What I'm doing is telling the story of something. And I think that if you're creating completely without that idea, then for me, it's the accidental. There are accidental stories that get woven into things you may not have intended that other people see, because one of the wonderful things about art is that people bring themselves to it. I view it, and I may see a man and a woman, and based on my relationship with my partner, I feel a certain way about that, and somebody else standing next to me, based on their relationship with their partner, feels a completely different way about the same painting. So we're getting a different story. And neither of those stories may be what the original painter intended. But I would find it very odd if the painter was like, oh, I just painted a man and woman who are standing there, instead of saying, oh, this is a man and a woman who I know, and I'm just, they were standing in a certain way, and I wanted to sort of capture the look between them because I thought it was interesting. Like, even that to me is a story. I just think, so that's why I agree with you and disagree with you at the same time.
Very well explained.
That's it.
I don't have to add anything to that, I think.
Well, I mean, with putting a story out there, it can be just like your personal, you make choices, right? You make choices of what colors you choose. You make choices of what you put on there. And that usually springs from your story, like your experience, your thought process, right? So even if you don't intend to really tell a story, there is something of your story in whatever you put out there. Which also, there's a great saying, because I had this discussion with a couple of friends too, artist friends, and it was about if art is political. And, there's a great saying all art is political. Even if you choose to make art that has no statement and it's just beautiful, like an armchair that hugs you, that's a statement. That's a political statement. You chose not to make a statement, obviously. So I mean, it's an interesting and fascinating, topic. It doesn't mean like it's bad or, however you tell the story or whatever you intend with it. I mean, intention is always like, also like, as Julie said, the viewer might not actually get the same thing. And maybe that's also not your intention as an artist, right? Like, you might not even want the viewer to really like get it. You want, some.
May I tell you a story?
Yeah.
Since we're speaking of.
Yes.
Okay, so back college, I dyed part of my hair blue, right? Not a big step. A lot of people go through that phase, right? People reacted to me so differently when I had blue hair, and it wasn't even like my whole head was blue, just I had like a couple streaks of blue, than when I didn't. And I remember having a long conversation with my mother where I was like, I don't get it. Like, I'm the same person I was yesterday, and yet people treat me so differently. And, you know, in the ensuing conversation, I mean, what it essentially boils down to, and I can certainly see with hindsight now, is whether you want to or not, the way you dress yourself, the way you present yourself tells a story, right? People make up a story about you based on what they see, and it may be an incorrect story and it may be an improper story, but they are making up a story about you. And so there's a wonderful African author whose name I'm desperately trying to pull out of my brain, and apparently I cannot, but I'm going to tell you, I heard her on a podcast talking about the idea of story and the reason she became a writer. And one of the things that she said is she is from Nigeria and she came to college in America. And one of the things that happened is these girls in the dorm room that she was in, her roommates, you know, they had a little kitchen and they were like, this is a stove. This is where we cook food. And she suddenly was like, oh my God, what do they think Africa is? And she was like, do they think we are sitting around campfires? And she realized they had a story in their minds about Africans. And people kept saying to her constantly, you speak such good English. And she was like, English is the language that is spoken in Nigeria, right? And so, again, people had a story about who she must be. And so one of the reasons she was interested in becoming a writer was to tell sort of different versions of stories and different sides of stories. And so I think that story is one of those things that we as humans make up stories about people all the time. In fact, like most prejudice and bias and stuff is based on a story that we have made up about whatever is happening in front of us, right? So we can't help but communicate stories. We can't help but share stories. And I agree with you completely that I think being conscious at the very least that what you do communicates something to other people is a really important, you know, part of it. And that once you realize that, then you have the ability to harness the power of it. So to me, yes, all art has some kind of story, but being a storyteller is being a person who's harnessing that and actually able to use it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Birgit? She's like, sorry.
I think that's true, but and then it depends on why are you making art and for who? I mean, I basically, even though I am a teacher and I'm posting on Instagram and everywhere, I do it just for me because I love doing it and I don't care what somebody else thinks of it, and I'm not trying to tell a story with it. I'm just making something that I like. And what Julie said, it makes sense. People will see a story in there. They will think that I made it for a reason, or to tell something, or to give my opinion about something or anything. But most of the time it's not. Most of the time I just sit down and create something because I like to create and make something that I like. And there's not like a story in my mind that I'm creating this because, and that's what I want to show the world. I don't make it to show the world. You know what I mean? So, and of course there are a lot of artists that do have this vision of showing their story to the world. And even though maybe people will not see the actual story in it, it was their intention to say something with what they make. And most of the time, I don't intend to say something to people with what I make. So it depends on what your starting point is, I suppose.
Well, I found it always so interesting in school. You know, I'm reading always. I've always been reading a ton of books. And when you have literature in school, and let's say you read something where there is not a lot of, evidence of what the author actually wanted to say about it. Like, I remember we were reading, I don't even know what the title in English is, but we were reading Heinrich Böll, Ansichten eines Clowns, something about the view of a clown, maybe. I would have to look it up. and you're there to interpret the book, right? Like, what is the intention of the author? And what I always hated was when you are like writing something and you're arguing where you find that to be true or not, what you're thinking about that, and then the author didn't say anything about it, and the teacher goes, well, this is totally wrong, like your idea of it is not right. Like sometimes you had a teacher like that, right? And you're like, well, how do you know, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one time when we did the Heinrich Böll book, he actually said about this, I just had fun writing this character. I just had fun, like, and I was like, well, yeah, but that doesn't make you. That's exactly what I say. Maybe sometimes the person just had fun by developing a character, and that doesn't make the story that I see there, or what that tells me, or what I feel in that moment when I read it, wrong, right? Because I bring my own story to whatever's out there. So
this is the Clement Greenberg problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, Clement Greenberg was a very, very famous art critic, and I took an art history class, and I remember getting into a huge argument with the teacher because I interpreted the art one way, and I was told that I was wrong because Clement Greenberg says yada, yada, yada. And my feeling was that art is meant to be interpreted by the viewer and can be interpreted in multiple ways, right? But that's wrong, FYI. Because apparently if Clement Greenberg didn't say it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think that goes back to a lot of things, like, are you supposed to pay attention to the artist's intent, or are you supposed to pay attention to where you are right now? I mean, people even talk about things like Andy Warhol meant for his work to be based on things that were just like garbage that was easily accessible. But now those old packages and stuff, they're antiques. And so they have a sort of preciousness about them now that they didn't used to, Like if you went in and saw a bunch of, whatever black garbage bags that were used to piled up, it's a lot different than some weird esoteric old, tin can that you don't see anymore. And so there is this kind of endless evolution, I think, of how we see art based on where we are in time, where we personally are. I mean, I still remember, Natalie, when you and I were in Germany and we went to see the parts of the Berlin Wall, and there was some of the art that you explained to me literally because I did not have the cultural context for it to understand that a banana had a serious symbolic, meaning. I looked at it and I was like, it's a banana. And you were like, oh my God, you're so stupid.
That's not what I said.
No, you never said that. You were very kind about it. But again, that comes like sometimes you just don't have the context in order to understand what the story is that someone was trying to. So then I think you come at it from a new perspective, and I think my personal feeling, I am not Clement Greenberg, and he's dead, so too bad for him as well. But, I think, like, I believe that art is meant to be interpreted. It's kind of like writing a book, right? I mean, how many people watch the movie of a book and say, that's not what that character looks like?
Yeah.
Because you've read it, you consumed it, you've imagined it, and it's the same thing, right? We all bring ourselves into whatever we consume.
I want to say something to that. It's actually interesting because you reminded me of something. We had the same conversation about art when you and I went to MoMA many, many, many years ago. We went so many times, all three of us actually together. And there was work by Lawrence, which you explained to me. You were asking me, what do you see when you see those characters or the subjects, what he's painting, what does that tell you? And I didn't know anything about the Great Migration, which is like, when, between 1915 and 1917, there was a big migration in America where Black Americans, African Americans would go from the South because of the horrible Jim Crow laws to the North and, for better living conditions. And I didn't know that background story because that's not something that is actually taught in, Germany a lot. So when I was looking at those.
Frankly, fought a lot in America.
Exactly. Yeah, well, this is what I'm figuring out now too. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because when I was looking at the paintings, was the same for me as for you with the banana on the Berlin Wall, right? I just saw what he painted, but it didn't. It was a different story. Like I had to make up a story, and I have been just recently reading a book about the Great Migration and have been thinking about this incident where we both were in the museum and pulled up the work again because I was like, now that I know more about the history of the Great Migration, I look at this artwork in a different way, right? Did you ever had this kind of feeling where you were looking at some artwork, Birgit, in a different, because you traveled like so much too, and you were in so many different museums where you felt like you might not get this because it's a cultural difference or something that you just don't know about the history of the country or the person who made it?
Yeah, of course that happens because there are a lot of artists in musea that you have never heard of and you have no idea what their background is and why they created what they created, right? So I usually, when I go to a museum, I first look at the artwork for a while and then I read the sign that is next to it. And then sometimes you actually get surprised by what the meaning of the artwork is or why it was created or who the person actually was that created it. And then when you look at it again, you can look at it very differently. It can also give you a very different feeling. I mean, sometimes you look at something and you feel like it's a happy painting, maybe because there were like happy colors, bright colors. And then when you read the sign, it might actually be painted by a very sad person or because of a very sad incident or something like that. And then when you look at it again, you get a very different feeling by how you look at it and what you see then. You see something different. So yeah, that happens.
Are you like me? I'm sometimes lost with contemporary art where there is no explanation whatsoever. And
yeah.
I have a hard time relate to any of that and actually coming up with something. And then if there is no signage or explanation, I have to say I feel kind of lost. Do you have that feeling?
No. When that happens, then I'm usually like, well, I either like it or I don't, and I make up my own story. And if there's no story in it, then I probably don't like it, and I just move on to the next one. I don't stay there and look at it for hours because I need to find the meaning of artwork or anything. That's not something that I do. If I don't like it, I just move on. If I don't get it, I also move on. But that doesn't mean that when I don't get it, I also don't like it. I might still like something even though I don't get it. You know what I mean?
I think it's such an interesting idea of like getting it, because I think that if you say you don't get something, and I say this all the time, I don't get it. Like, I think what you're assuming is that there's something of value that you somehow are not understanding. And there's an interesting counter argument in there to make, which is if the piece isn't communicating, then actually it's not doing its job, right? And that it's not that you have a lack. This reminds me very much of Nathalie and I went shopping at Gudrun Schoden were we in Germany maybe again? And I put on a dress and I was like, ugh, my boobs are too big, right? Just Match City did not fit. And she was like, no, the dress is too small in that area. And I was like, that's such a different way of thinking about it. In the first statement, I'm the problem. And in the second statement, the dress is the problem. And so I think the same thing is true. There's a lot of contemporary art that I don't get. But, frankly, there's a lot of contemporary art that I think is crappy shit that does not communicate effectively. I feel like even if you're trying to tell a story, if I have to read your 20-page thesis to understand what it is you're trying to communicate, then it's not effective as a piece of art. To me, art is the magical combination of a visual burst that is arresting, that grabs you. It's a moment when you look at something, and when you look deeper, there is more content there. That's for me. It's personal, but that's what I like in art. And so I think it's the same as like anything else. I have a lot of the emperor has no clothes moments with some contemporary art. It's a bit problematic for me. But I would also say that I think it's that if you like something, you know what I mean, then you probably do get it. You probably do get it.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
Yeah.
Because what you're getting is a feeling, an emotion, something that's touching you in some way, you know?
True.
I think that's why I agree totally. And I think that sometimes white people feel that art can be so. And I talked about that with Jimmy Leslie, you know, who is the resident artist and for Winsor Newton and whatever, all kinds of companies. And he was a college art professor, and he said, yeah, like sometimes art is just too snobby. And I agree. I think there's something where people get intimidated by art because they think, well, someone put this in a museum for a reason, and I should understand it, but I don't understand it. So it makes people sometimes feel, you know, maybe stupid, or why do I not get it, right? Like maybe I'm not worthy. And yeah, I think that's a problem sometimes. And of course, sometimes you understand it if you, especially with modern art, if you read a little bit more about the time, or you learn a little bit. I remember as a teenager, I didn't get, like, I was like, oh, old masters, like, right? I could understand, I could make up stories there. There's a person in the picture, and you know, shadow and light, get all the Dutch masters in school, right? And my parents would take me to these, like, my stepfather and my mother would schlep me to those, like, you know, modern art museums. And they also had like a little bit of a nick for, you know, mid-century furniture. Haha, Nathalie has that right now too, right? And I was like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. But I also didn't have this, like, kind of, when you learn a little bit more about how the times were at this time, and that was like, yeah, now it looks like someone just pulled some paint on, but that how revolutionary that was, right? Or if you hear Stravinsky's Rite of Spring in 1906 in a ballet, you know, form, and you were in that theater, people were outraged at his music and would leave the theater, right? And nowadays you listen to that and you're like, yeah, well, what was the fuss about it, right? So if you know a little bit of the background, you might also appreciate it in a different way, or not, right?
Well, I think that, you know, seeing the value in something through looking through things with a historical lens is certainly important, but I do really wholeheartedly believe in the fact that each of us has within us an art critic, and it's okay to trust yourself.
Exactly.
You know, and that we don't all have to like the same thing. In fact, what I would say is that things that we all like probably aren't good.
Yeah.
Because things that are really good, there are people who hate it because they touch something, they push something, they move you in a way. And so I would say it's more work to me is more interesting. I find myself more passionate about things that I love, and other people are kind of like, really, you know. And I think that's great. I think that is also where the dialogue comes about it. That's why it's fun to go to a museum with a friend. That's why it's fun to go to a gallery with somebody. It's why it's fun to talk about art. It's why it's fun to make art with friends. I mean, one of the things that has been the hardest for me about the pandemic is, as much as I really enjoy the Zoom teaching and all that kind of stuff, it's not quite the same as being in the room and really being able to look over your students' shoulders, or being a student in a class where you really get to, like, just sort of make and hang out and have that feeling of having the conversation we're having right now. I mean, I think one of the things that has been so lovely about our friendship over the years for the three of us, you know, has been that we've had this annual thing until Birgit stopped going, and then Nathalie stopped going, and then I stopped going. But we had this annual thing every year, right, where we would go to Creative Asian, CHA, whatever it was, and we would meet up, and it was always a sense of, like, okay, let's talk about where you are in your life, what's going on, kids, partners, all that kind of stuff. Okay, what's going on in your, art life? Like, what companies are you working with? How's it going? And then also just sort of some bigger picture conversations about what do you believe about art? How do you feel, about these things? What are the things that are interesting and exciting? And I think it has always been the intellect of the two of you and many of our other mutual friends that has been so precious and exciting and interesting, because to me, there's something about when you combine, sort of like all that sort of intuitive, flowy painting that people do, where I'm just feeling my way through it. Like, I'm very glad that you do that. That hippy dippy crap doesn't work for me, and I can't do that, because what I know is my brain is in there and I'm never going to 100% kick it out. So I love the conversations that we have where we really talk about ideas, because the thing again, and this comes back to being a storyteller, and this comes back to bringing yourself into your art, because we can have a conversation about something completely stupid that is not directly related to art. It could be, even the conversation we were having before we started this recording, and I can find myself sitting down in 2 days and being like, that's tickling in my brain now because it was stimulating. Let me think about how this is actually playing out now with these collage shapes, even though you may have no idea, you know what I mean? But I know that that is somewhere in me that I'm carrying now with me, that stuff. So, I mean, all of that is to say that I think that part of being an artist, and I think that part of being a storyteller as an artist, is just constantly finding ways to stimulate yourself. If what's exciting to you is talking to smart people about ideas, like, go and do that. If it's exciting to go look at art that you hate, and look at it, like, great, you know what I mean? Rock on. But it's like, I think that is another pandemic difficult thing, right? Is that where is the stimulation coming from? I'm looking, are the new impulses coming from, kind of stuff. So that's just some stuff that's rattling in my brain, you guys.
I agree with this, and I have told that before, is that I'm actually really happy that a friend of mine who is a writer and actor has, for 22 weeks now, we do a weekly COVID roundtable, it's called, but it's writers, actors, screenplay writers. And at first I was like, I'm the only visual artist in here. What's going on? And it has influenced me in so many ways. I can't even tell you like how much it's just like, I'm looking forward to our Tuesday 1 hour thing. And I would even say that storytelling came from that group, because they're all, as writers and playwrights, and they would perform or read things too, once in a while. And we would do collaborative things where someone was like, I like your artwork, can I write a story for that? And then someone would have read it and was a monologue, and we would all be together and invite friends. So it has been really, really stimulating. And I agree that I'm looking forward to it so much, because I'm craving these things that the impulses and the ideas that you usually get when you're just like, you can go out, you meet your friends, you go to a museum, etc. It's all like compact now in your own, 4 walls. I don't even know if you say that in English, but I think you get the picture. Have you been going out to museums again, Birgit, since things opened up a little bit more in the Netherlands?
No, we've not been really going to inside things. And it's also very limited. You have to register before you can go and stuff like that. But now as long as the weather is nice, we try to only do outside stuff. So, no, not really.
You need a sculpture park.
Yeah, something like that. Right? That would be a good idea, actually. Yeah.
I was thinking about we should go to Storm King. There's this nice sculpture park in upstate New York, and is it already upstate? Doesn't matter. It's north of New York City.
It is.
Right. So speaking of storytelling, I asked you, I have this thread going on in all the interviews, and I asked you if each of you could pull out an object that you have in your creative space that brings you joy, and if you can show it to us and tell a story about it. So I'm going to let Birgit go first because I'm mean.
What does that mean? Well, I actually, and I didn't make it up for this interview. This is real, just so you know. This is something that you will recognize, Nathalie, because I got it from you. And this is, and you can see there are black and white pens in there, and I use them on almost everything I do. So this is actually always on my table, and this is says New Jersey.
Very sad that New Jersey brings you joy, by the way.
Go away.
Object, right? So on the other side is New York. So that must bring you joy, Julie. But when I look at this, it always brings back nice memories because I got it from you when I visited you when you were in New Jersey for, I think, just a year. It was very early when you just moved there. And I spent a lovely week with you, and I even remember where you got it because you very sneaky bought it while I was in the same store. And then later when we were outside, you gave it to me. And I also like the story that this sign actually is in the tunnel, and we drove through the tunnel. I think it was in a cab with Jim. And it was the Holland Tunnel, and although the name Holland is the name of the architect, it is also, of course, my home country, right? So that's very interesting. And it brings back good memories. I was with you. You showed me New York. You showed me Jersey City. We saw a lot of art, a lot of street art also, which was very nice. We taught together at the Inkpad. So that was really nice too. And the sad thing is, when I look at this, is that I was supposed to come back in November, and that's not going to happen, I think. So at least I still have this mug and can look at it and have my nice memories. And I actually met Julie there too. And talking about Julie and visiting you in New York, something else that is on the shelf next to me.
Don't you dare! If that is a Yankee shirt,
Yes, do it.
No, it's not a Yankee shirt. It's something I got from you, Julie, and I still have it on.
Okay.
So
I remember when I made that.
You made this for me. And it's a cardboard box, and it's still, after all these years, it's been on my shelf for all these years, and I had to dust it up a little bit. It was a little bit dusty, but it's been there for all these years, and also something that I really like to look at. I think you made it with your scan and cut or something like that.
I did.
And I don't know if people will recognize it, but this is my profile, right?
Yeah, we will recognize that.
Picture. And so that's a couple of my.
I think your favorite memory of visiting New York and New Jersey at that time was when we both were wearing Yankee shirts and rubbed them on Julie's sofa that she wanted to burn afterwards.
Yeah, and then I sent her this picture when I was on my flight back to the Netherlands. I actually had 2 seats and I could lie down a little bit, and I put on Yankee socks. And I made a photo to send to Julie. I'm so comfy in my Yankee socks.
You know, the torturing of me, I'm just saying.
Oh. That was fun, Birgit. I love that. I love that you have that mug still. I didn't even remember that anymore. So let's see what Julie has.
I have my phone. Now you're wondering why my phone is such an important object. But so first of all, I'm going to tell a story. So the story goes like this. Natalie said to me before this interview began, "Did you read the email I sent you?" And I was at once both offended and absolutely understood why she asked that, because I currently have, I don't know, I have 6,000 unread emails at the moment.
This is not currently, by the way. That's always.
That's always. That's always. So I just don't read my email. But when I read the email, I'm very proud of myself that I did it, where she asked if there was an object that you always had to have with you when you were creating. And I thought, like, what, no matter where I am, do I need to have? And the answer truly is my phone, and I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why. So the first is I obsessively listen to podcasts when I create. Endlessly. I have like a mile-long queue. I go through tons and tons and tons of them. I listen to financial news. I listen to marketing. I listen to art interviews. I listen to storytelling. And the funny thing is, when I look at my work, I can remember the podcast that I was listening to when I made that. There is a quilt that I'm working on, and I listened to a book on tape when I stitched it together. And it was a bodice ripping romance kind of book. I remember every moment of that book when I look at that quilt. And I think like that this is so an amazing thing, which is these stories, these voices, it's Science Friday, like all whatever these random things are that are in my head because of this little device have actually become a huge part of my art. And I do sometimes wonder, some people say they have to listen to music when they create, they can't listen to words or they get too influenced. And I don't know whether I'm okay having this other influence, or if it doesn't sort of bother me that way. I actually find that I'm more influenced by music. Like if I were to listen to something really moody, I feel like I start creating moody. Whereas somehow when someone's talking, it's less of an issue for me. So I would say without question, this is my sacred object. Don't take my podcasts away from me.
Nice. That's a good one. I like that. It's fun to see.
Yours?
Oh, mine? I didn't think. Well, I didn't read my email.
She didn't read her email.
It's super fun to see the different things, but also hearing, like this makes me all warm and fuzzy to see and hear about your nice things. So, last question for you guys. Before I've taken a lot of your time, and it's because I can't let you go. I want to have you around me in person, actually. Guys, where can people find you? Julie, when someone wants to find you online, where can they find you?
So my blog is balzerdesigns.typepad.com. My online classroom is at balzerdesigns.com. And I'm basically Balzer Designs everywhere on Instagram, etc., everything else. And so I'm easily findable. There are very few Fei-Fan Balzers out in the world.
That's true. Thank you. Birgit?
Yeah, there are also very few Koopsens, so that's not so difficult either. Most of it you will find on Instagram, and it's Birgit Koopsen. Very easy. Same for Facebook. I don't have a blog. I do have a couple of videos on YouTube, but that's not really huge. So, Instagram mostly.
Yeah, cool. Check those two out if you haven't yet. I'm going to put the links, of course, underneath the video when I post it. And also at the end of the video, you will see a picture of them both and their URLs or their Instagram accounts. And so I cannot wait to see your videos, and I know they will be fun. Sign up for Creative Jumpstart, right?
I was going to say, it's going to be a surprise for all of us what they are.
I know, the suspense.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to see my video too.
Yeah, right? I know. So sign up for Creative Jumpstart. I promise you by the time that you see this video, they actually turned in their video already, because I will make them read their emails. Thank you too for being such amazing supporting friends, for for being here for me, for supporting Creative Jumpstart, and for always being part of it. You mean a lot to me. I love you a lot, and I miss you guys, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Same here.